When
That's okay.
fine, he's rebellious and, joined in the group.
Perfect. Oh, let her
Oh, can we let Gina
John,
in?
once I paid this, like nothing, but I'm like, how does that look?
How do you offer that?
Wow.
I know, I think that's what's obvious.
All right, hey everyone, good morning.
Yeah.
Hey,
You don't know how stuff sounds once it gets out your mouth.
welcome back, Pedro.
Oh, thank you, sir.
You're back from the far hinterlands of Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Minus some kidney stones or whatever.
Kidney stones, neck pain, you name it. That place was not very kind to me.
Where were you in Saudi Arabia?
All over.
Literally.
I was based in Riyadh, but
What were you
I was shooting for the Department of Tourism, so I was like, I don't know, 25, 30 cities.
Yeah, I've been to Jeddah, Riyadh.
Jeddah's nice, but hot. Riyadh is getting better. It was hot. My games was hot.
So thanks to Charlene for facilitating y'all's conversation last week when I was out. I was in Louisville. I've been gone most of this past week. I was in Louisville for 3 days, and then I was in El Paso for 2 days. Well, 2 nights. So I love El Paso.
I do too.
I mean, El Paso is a beautiful. Hey, Elizabeth. El Paso is a beautiful town. It's very clean. It's very safe. Most people think El Paso is a lawless town overrun by immigrants. It is not. I've walked all over downtown El Paso a couple of times. I feel, and I've never seen a policeman. And I feel very, very safe there. It's very clean. It's super clean. And the people are friendly. And I love El Paso. Yeah.
It's not on the Texas Power Grid.
I have to find my glasses.
It's not on the Texas Power because it's barely in Texas. It really. I had this conversation with someone from Raleigh yesterday who lives in our neighborhood. That my theory is, at a minimum, El Paso should be part of New Mexico. That where it comes down, right? Like that part of it. But in reality, I believe that parts of West Texas and most of southeastern New Mexico should be their own state.
Correct.
Right? Because it's a whole different. They have so much more in common. Right?
Well, they're in mountain time too.
Oh yeah, plus they're in mountain time. Yeah, crazy. Here's a trivia question.
No, they're not
How-
mountain times.
El Paso's mountain time.
Is it?
Yep.
Really?
All right, but Darrell has a friend that moved just out of it, so maybe it is. But I thought the time was different where she went west.
Yeah, no, it's New Mexico time, as I call
Maybe
it.
New Mexico needs to own it.
That's what he said.
That's what I think,
Oh.
right? I think it needs to be part of New Mexico, but I also think southeastern New Mexico and West Texas should be their own state.
That's probably true.
And you got the oil culture, and you got all sorts of things. But that's not what you came to Sunday school for today. Mark redrawing the political map of the United States. But if they would ask me, right? So here's a trivia question for you. How many states in the United States span more than one time zone?
Texas, maybe?
I think it's 3.
Okay.
Indiana.
Well, technically Indiana's all in one time zone.
I thought Indianapolis. Okay.
Yeah, but the
They'd
problem
rather
is
be with Detroit.
Indiana has daylight savings time on a county by county basis.
Arizona has
Wow.
So if you drive in Indiana, it's during daylight savings time. You have to ask people, are you on slow time or fast time? That's what they call it.
My goodness.
So Tennessee, Kentucky, and Texas, I think, are the 3.
The 3 T's.
That's right.
3 T's.
Okay, two T's and a K.
All
Two T's and a K.
It's got a T in it.
Arizona's all in the same time zone, I believe.
All the time, the same time.
Oh yeah, because they don't change.
Yeah.
That's smart.
Maybe New Mexico keeps trying, but they haven't gotten there yet.
Okay, well, enough travelogue, enough geography. The reason I was in El Paso, some of you have read my report on this, is back in February, I used my Friday Roundup column just with one request to raise some money to build a new migrant shelter across the border in Mexico. Well, there's one that was really in need of help that works all through Fellowship Southwest. That's one of our mission partners. And I raised $44,000 in 1 week, just with that one email. I wish I could do as well for B&G. We could use that right now. But, you know, those who help others help themselves.
If you're Ben Franklin.
Thank you. I'm trying to be pithy today, right? So they had a dedication for the shelter that we helped build, and it's not. Supposedly people were moving into it yesterday. They had a lot of work to do from Wednesday to, but who knows? I mean, it's small, it's basic, but I could go on and on all day about this and the work that's happening at the border. The most interesting thing, though, that happened was we got to meet with the 4 top officials of the Customs and Border Patrol Office at the Columbus, New Mexico station. So the place where we were is in Palomas, which is right across the border. And if you want to know the American history here, the Mexican history is Palomas into Columbus is where Pancho Villa came over and made his raid.
Oh.
Right, killed 13 people. But what we don't hear is why he did that, because there had been an invasion back the other way. That's a whole other story. But that's where this is. So it's about an hour west of El Paso, where this is all going on. And I was very impressed with the Border Patrol top brass. They were kind, they were compassionate, they were articulate, they were very friendly, and all 4 of them have been there 22, 23, 24 years.
Wow.
So that's a big commitment. They also, all of them, all the staff there's 80 people who work there. Almost all of them drive from El Paso every day to be there. So they drive more than an hour to work and an hour back home in the middle of nowhere, really. And it's just a tremendous level of commitment, I think. So I'm happy to talk more about that later, but that's not our lesson for today. We've got a lot of verses to cover today. I'm going to try. We'll see how far we get. The thing is, there's a whole section that's related, and we'll see how far we get with it, okay? I can't make any promises. We're in, this is the Gospel of John. I almost said Acts. This is John. That'll throw you a curve, right? This is John chapter 7. And we are beginning today. I'm not going to say this first number without looking, because I may be wrong.
7:10.
I think it's around verse 10. My Bible app just had to restart completely. Verse 10. Yeah, chapter 7, verse 10. So remember where we left off 2 weeks ago. We were talking about how Jesus' brothers, his own brothers, his half-brothers, didn't even believe him. And they wanted to carry Jesus up to the festival in Jerusalem to show him off and let him do his signs and wonders. And he said, thank you very much, no. So picking up in verse 10. But after his brothers had gone to the festival, then he also went, not publicly, but as it were in secret. The Jews were looking for him at the festival and saying, where is he? And there was considerable complaining about him among the crowds. While some were saying, he is a good man, others were saying, no, he is deceiving the crowd. Yet no one would speak openly about him for fear of the Jews. Okay, pause here. Come in, y'all. Remember that for fear of the Jews is not intended to be a reference to all Jews. This is not an we cannot read this should not read this as an anti-Semitic comment. This is for fear of the Jewish leaders. All right? Now, we all understand how this works because we're living in this kind of bubble today where people will not criticize people who need to be criticized for fear of their base politically. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay. That's what's happening here. The Jewish leaders were so powerful in their clout that no one would even speak of Jesus for fear of offending them. Right? We understand this. Verse 14. About the middle of the festival, that doesn't mean like the middle of the day. This is a multi-day festival, right? So days going on here. Big crowds. Jesus went up into the temple and began to teach. So he comes out of hiding. That's pretty public, right? The Jews, again, same people, were astonished at it, saying, "How does this man have such learning when he has never been taught?" Then Jesus answered them, "My teaching is not mine, but his who sent me." And verse 17 is the linchpin to this entire passage for today. So we're going to underline it, highlight it, put it in boldface. Anyone who resolves to do the will of God will know whether the teaching is from God or whether I am speaking on my own. Anyone who resolves to do the will of God will know whether the teaching is from God or whether I'm speaking on my own. Pause. 2 current events to illustrate this conundrum. And throughout all of Jewish and Christian history, particularly Christian history, there has been this struggle to know who speaks the truth and who doesn't. Because even the scriptures, even in Judaism, warned of false prophets that would come. And so the people are on alert that they've got to figure out, is this for real or is this not for real? Okay, 3 current events. I just thought of the third one to illustrate this. I was reading this morning at breakfast a story out of Texas Monthly that was about the latest incident of, let's say, agents of the state of Florida in El Paso, where I just was, at a church I have walked by and know exactly where it is, a Catholic church, recruiting immigrants who've made it safely across the border and are here legally, recruiting them to get on private jets to go to California with the promise that they'll get housing and food and expedited. These are agents of the state of Florida working in Texas to enlist people. And this Texas Monthly story portrays the dilemma these immigrants face. Like, do I get on this plane or not? Should I get on it? Can I trust what you're saying because I think you might be a drug smuggler? I think you might be an organ. I think you may be after my organs. And they're very suspicious of all these things, as they should be. And the majority of people said, no, thank you, I'll stay here, sleeping on the street outside the Catholic Church. But a few of them went, right? And the Texas Monthly story goes into all the detail about this. This is one illustration today of how people in vulnerable situations have difficult decisions to make about who do I trust? Who do I believe? And religion is like this too. So Pat Robertson died this week.
Wow. Yes, he did.
I'm trying to not say anything pejorative about this, but I will anyway. One of the greatest charlatans of religion of our time.
Yeah, but now you save $700 a month. Don't you?
You can save $700 a month. It is so Allison and I were having this conversation in the car on the way to church this morning because she asked what I was teaching about. And I said Pat Robertson. and her question was, do you think he really believed what he said? And that is a difficult question to answer, right? This is a man who is so full of baloney, and that is a nice word for this, right? I've got some samples for you.
Think how exhaustive it must have been if he didn't believe it.
Well, that's the point, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but that you can gear yourself up and then self-delude.
Yeah, after the earthquake in Haiti in 2010, Pat Robertson went on TV and attributed it to a curse tied to the malevolent spiritual forces with the help of which, he said, Haitian slaves overthrew their French colonizers in the late 18th and early 19th century.
Wait, this is a bad thing?
Oh yeah,
The witchcraft.
And now they're getting.
yeah. The slaves in Haiti who overthrew their English oppressors were possessed by an evil spirit.
Really?
That's what he said. Yeah, the Haitian slaves should not have overthrown the white landlords and masters because the only way they could have done it was with the power of an evil spirit.
Where do people come up with this kind of stuff? Are they just crazy?
Well, I don't know. But y'all, this man was on TV for 50 years. 50 years. Here's his number two great hit. He was fixated on sex. And he was fixated on gay sex in particular.
Pat Robertson?
Pat Robertson. I know this is a disgusting thought, but okay. In 2013, on the 700 Club, he claimed that members of the gay community in San Francisco are so eager to spread HIV that they have special rings that they wear, and when you shake their hands, the ring's got a little knife on it, and it's going to cut your finger, so you can get infected.
Oh my God.
He said this on national TV. Okay. Just a few more samples, okay? In 2003, he said some good old-fashioned terrorism might help U.S. foreign policy. Maybe we need a very small nuke thrown off on Foggy Bottom. That's the
State Department.
State Department headquarters to shake things up. And he said, Christians, he said, never commit acts of terrorism. You don't hear somebody, Christian extremists killing film producers, Christian extremists blowing up trains. It just doesn't happen. Okay, he's forgotten a whole bunch of world history. If he ever knew it, right? And I could go on and on and on. Here's a great soundbite about feminism. I'm sorry, I can't even read this with a straight face. The feminist agenda is not about equal rights for women. It is about a socialist, anti-family political movement that encourages women to leave their husbands, kill their children, practice witchcraft, destroy capitalism, and become lesbians.
Why do people not put him in an insane asylum?
Thank you, Carol Ann. But here's my point. The reason I'm going through all this for you is millions of people believed what Pat Robertson said and sent him money every month to do it. Right? He had a tremendous following that stuck with him through the years. And we hear this and we're astonished, right? How can anyone believe this drivel? But people do, right? People do believe this drivel. Next illustration. Well, we were talking before class about this week is the Southern Baptist Convention annual meeting. And y'all, I've been around this a long time. I started covering and reporting on and working with Southern Baptist Convention. I hadn't grown up Southern Baptist, but 1982. So I've been at this 41 years, okay?
Wow.
And I've seen a lot, but I have never seen the run-up to what's about to happen in New Orleans. And it's like a multi-level chess game, right? There's 3 or 4 things going at the same time, right? You've got the sexual abuse response thing that people are contesting. You've got a hotly contested presidential election. And you've got the whole Rick Warren thing. So y'all know Rick Warren, right? Founding pastor of Saddleback Church. or the largest churches in America, the absolute largest Southern Baptist church, although they got kicked out of the Southern Baptist Convention because they ordained 3 women and they allow women to preach now. Yeah, and this is a conservative church, y'all. Rick Warren is no, I've known Rick a long time, he is no liberal, right? He's very friendly, he's a lovely person, by the way. But he's conservative at core. But he has come in the last few years to a new revelation that he had not studied the scriptures carefully enough. And his bias against women in ministry was just that, a bias. And he is not alone in this revelation. The Spirit is moving once again and bringing people to new awareness of this. But this is getting him clobbered in the SBC. So so the SBC is willing to expel its largest church, its most prominent church. And yesterday, he tweeted out the most fascinating tweet of anything. I mean, he's been tweeting like a madman lately. And some people think he is a madman, but that's their problem. An apology to Christian women. It is an apology to Christian women. I misunderstood. I'm so sorry. We need you. It is amazing. Well, you just ought to see the response to this on Twitter. Because the people I call the Theo Bros, who when we hear the Jews in John's Gospel, we could just substitute Theo Bros, okay? Because the Theo Bros today are typically young to middle-aged male Calvinists who are absolutely committed to their belief above all else in rule keeping and how smart they are and how stupid everyone else is. And so this is a man, Rick Warren is a man who started and grew the largest Southern Baptist church in America, has evangelized, baptized, discipled more people than most state Baptist conventions put together. Just unbelievable what's happened in this situation. And these Theo Bros have the audacity to say, yeah, but he doesn't know the scriptures. And so the response today is, just like the response to Jesus, he's not learned like us. Now, they're so learned, they're in churches of 20 people, and, that's not doing a lot for the kingdom by comparison. Not that there's anything wrong with being a church of 20 people. But I don't think you need to be schooled. And so, his books were just fluff, and he doesn't know theology like us. Okay, his books, whether you like them or not, one of them sold 30 million copies. 30 million. That's a lot, right? But you're going to discredit him because he doesn't understand Greek and Hebrew the way you do. Well, to get to his conclusion, he says, he read more than 100 books where he was really trying to understand the whole issue. And he's come out saying, look, the Great Commission is to men and women alike. The resurrection was announced to women. Yeah, we've been saying that for a while. By the way, a lot of our folks are saying to Rick Warren, where were you 20 years ago? We could have used you then.
How far does he go as far as acknowledging women to allow them to be senior pastors? Or because he hasn't gotten that yet, right?
This is complicated at Saddleback. Saddleback is still run by an all-male elder board. That's a whole nother story. But at the Saddleback original main campus, it's a multi-campus church, they've recently installed a woman as the campus pastor. And the campus pastor is the one who oversees the pastoral care for that campus.
Is that a wife?
No.
Oh.
I thought the pastor that replaced Rick Warren
Yes.
when he retired, that his wife.
She's a preaching pastor there.
That's what
She preaches.
Yeah.
He preaches, she preaches. Again, this is hard for us to understand because this is a multi-campus, multi-service. So at every campus, they have multiple services every weekend. It's more than one preacher like Rick Warren or his replacement, Andy.
Yeah. I don't know.
Andy, anyhow.
I can see him, but I can't.
Yeah, that he can do. Any one person can do. So they have a team of preachers, right? And she's one of them. And by his own admission, she's a better preacher than he is, right? But this is just driving the Theo Bros absolutely bonkers. And so they're trying to pass a constitutional amendment this week to kick out of the SBC any church that gives any woman the title pastor in any capacity. This is extreme, y'all. But their point is, we understand the Greek of the New Testament, and this is what it says. Well, they're straining gnats, right? And I tell you this long story because it's an exact parallel to what Jesus is facing with the Jewish authorities, right? So the group I call the Theo Bros today, who are so insufferable in their regulations and in their arrogance, they are the modern day iteration of what the Gospel of John calls the Jews. These are the religious leaders who are so proud of their piety that no one else could possibly understand, right? That's how we have to read this. Does this make sense? Any questions about any of that? I just dumped a whole load on you there. Follow B&G for all of the ins and outs of this. It is probably the most seismic Southern Baptist Convention meeting in history. And we've been through a lot in the past, right? Oh, by the way, if you missed this, the BGCT has kicked out 2 more churches this week as well, over the same reason they kicked us out, being too friendly to gay people. And one of those churches is Garrett Vickery's church in San Antonio. Yeah. So anyhow, all right. Verse 17 is the highlight to understand this whole passage. Anyone who resolves to do the will of God will know whether the teaching is from God or whether I'm speaking on my own. How do we know who speaks the truth and who doesn't speak the truth? Well, part of it requires some common sense. You get to Pat Robertson, and this is just crazy stuff, right? How can you believe that? And yet millions of people do because they want to believe it. They want to believe it, right? Yeah.
This is off the subject.
Oh, that's okay.
But you brought up one intern. So, a resident. How's Jacob doing?
Oh, Jacob Topper?
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, things are stabilizing there. They're doing well. I was up there a few weeks ago. Yeah, and they have a new baby.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I won't name him. His initials are DGT. He has just been pouring out the biggest load of crap that ever was this last week, and people voted.
So in politics and religion throughout history, people follow ideas and leaders that they find comfort in. And we can see how Jesus is he's not just literally upending the tables, he is metaphorically upending all the tables because he's challenging this religious status quo that was holding people in its own kind of bondage, right? The rules have become so stifling, too much regulation, which we could say. See, I can say that. I know you're surprised.
Well, it seems like so much has been going on lately. In the last 20 years, you've added the internet. So with that, we've got all the people who've got all these weird ideas, all these strange.
Right.
It used to have to be a Pat Robertson and get on the air.
Right.
And to air these things, now everyone just gets on Facebook.
That's right.
They get on different things, and they get into a group that says, his birth certificate isn't real or whatever.
Well, whatever.
It is.
Yeah.
And they're able to do that.
Aliens in Roswell.
So how do you equate?
Which, by the way, I think is probably true, but that's not true.
So how do you see what's going on with, say, Facebook, of what's being said and how they present
Yeah,
it?
so Jim, you got a great point.
How does that equate to what's happening in Jerusalem?
Social media has amplified everything. And I love this passage. Is it Hebrews or somewhere? It's in one of the epistles, where the writer says, in the fullness of time, God sent his son. Meaning, and we've covered this before in here, at just the right time. Yeah. At just the right time in world history. Mm-hmm. This was the moment of Jesus coming as the Messiah was just the right time in world history. And it's factors like these that play into that, because if the Messiah were to have come into today's, it would be tough, right? Because social media amplifies lies and misinformation. I think back to my life as a kid, and I was encountering people who had really fringe beliefs, and even as a young adult. But they were fringe. They were just, they didn't get an airing anywhere.
Right.
But today, anybody with a crazy idea can get a platform. Some of the craziest people I know have tens of thousands of followers on Twitter. This whole Southern Baptist thing, there's a particular pastor in East Texas who I will not name because he likes it when I name him. He's such a narcissist. There's a particular pastor who is the pastor of a small church out in East Texas. He's never held any position, never been elected to anything, but he has so many followers on Twitter who hang on his every word that he shapes the agenda far more than anyone could in another time. And it's all because of social media.
Give us his initials or tell us.
Oh, you wouldn't know if I said it. It's fine.
What town is he in?
I forgot the name of the town. I'm just trying to impress it.
It's like Sierra Gilmer.
Let me think of it. All right, verse 18. Those who speak on their own seek their own glory. But the one who seeks the glory of him who sent him is true, and there's nothing false in him. Okay, how do we measure the truth of something? Is one measure, Jesus says, is this bringing glory to yourself or to God? Mm-hmm. Is this promoting you? Is this building up you? And this is why I'm going to listen to Rick Warren over some of his critics, because Rick has the humility to say, I was wrong. Yeah. Anyone who's willing to show humility like that, I think, is worthy of a second listen, right? But anyone who says, I alone have the answer, I was doing some research on a story yesterday afternoon and came across the church website where you go to their About page, and the first sentence you see is, we have truth. No, it said, we are truth. What an arrogant thing to say. We are truth? It's just unbelievable, right? And Jesus teaches us another way, that what we think of God may not be the right thing, and we need to be open to the work of the Spirit. Verse 19. Did not Moses give you the law? Yet none of you keeps the law. Well, how could you? 666 laws, I think. Why are you looking for an opportunity to kill me? The crowd answered, you have a demon. Who's trying to kill you? Well, yeah, they were trying to kill him, but, Jesus answered them, I performed one work, and all of you are astonished. Moses gave you circumcision. Okay, this is a great play on words we're about to have here. Moses gave you circumcision. It is, of course, not from Moses, but from the patriarchs. And you circumcise a man on the Sabbath. It has to be done on the 8th day, according to Jewish law. If a man receives circumcision on the Sabbath in order that the law of Moses may not be broken, are you angry with me because I healed a man's whole body on the Sabbath? Do not judge by appearances, but judge with right judgment. In other words, you find it legal to cut a kid on the Sabbath to keep the law, but you don't find it legal for me to heal a wound on the Sabbath. See the juxtaposition? Mm-hmm. That's a pretty good stump speech right there. Mm-hmm. Well, it didn't work with them. Verse 25. Now some of the people of Jerusalem were saying, is not this the man whom they are trying to kill? Just a few minutes ago, they said, who's trying to kill you? Now, isn't he the man somewhere trying to kill? And here he is, speaking openly, but they say nothing to him. Can it be that the authorities really know that this is the Messiah? Okay, conspiracy theory
Yep,
here,
yep.
right?
Right.
Yet we know where this man is from, but when the Messiah comes, no one will know where he is from. This is that whole thing, can anything good come out of Nazareth, right? Then Jesus cried out as he was teaching in the temple, "You know me, and you know where I am from. I have not come on my own, but the one who sent me is true, and you do not know him. I know him because I am from him, and he sent me." Well, that set them off, right? He just agitated them.
Yeah.
Then they tried to arrest him, but no one laid hands on him, the writer John says, interpreting this later,
Yeah.
because his hour had not yet come. Yet many in the crowd believed in him and were saying, "When the Messiah comes, will he do more signs than this man has done?" That's a rhetorical question. In other words, hasn't he already done enough to convince us, right? Verse 32. The Pharisees heard the crowd muttering such things about him, and the chief priests and Pharisees sent temple police to arrest him. Jesus then said, "I will be with you a little while longer, and then I am going to him who sent me. You will search for me, but you will not find me, and where I am you cannot come." More enigma from Jesus. The Jews, the authorities, said to one another, "Where does this man intend to go that we will not find him?" They're so smart they can't understand metaphor. All right. Does he intend to go to the dispersion among the Greeks and teach the Greeks? What does he mean by saying, "You will search for me and you will not find me, and where I am you cannot come"? So they're so literalists, they cannot understand the message Jesus is teaching that is beyond them, right? But they pretend they're the ones who are the most learned in the law. Well, they're most learned in the letter of the law. And yet they are unable to hear the wind of the Spirit. All right.
How does that conflicts with that verse, if with all your heart you truly seek me, then there shall you ever find. The song
it doesn't conflict at
then
all.
you will find me. If you seek me with all your heart, you will find me.
And that's what Jesus said in verse 17. I said was the highlight of the verse.
But you're saying they will not be able to find. Is that the difference between whether they're Christians or not?
No, Jesus is speaking metaphorically here. You're trying to hunt me down,
Yeah.
but there's going to come a time when you can't find me. In other words, you may think you can silence me, you can kill me, but it's only going to make things worse. All right? So, example in modern American history, Martin Luther King Jr., right? Clearly, people thought if they could kill him, they could silence him, stop the movement. Did it work? No, it amplified the movement, right? And there's a principle here that when you make a martyr out of someone, that you embolden their cause. And I think this is part of what Jesus is saying here is, you may think you can get rid of me by hunting me down, but there's going to come a time when you're not going to be able to find me and you will not be able to stop this, right? Which indeed happened, right, after the resurrection. Verse 37, it was on the last day of the festival, the culminating day, the great day. While Jesus was standing there, he cried out, this is like performance art, "Let anyone who is thirsty come to me, and let the one who believes in me drink. As the scripture has said, out of the believer's heart shall flow rivers of living water." Now he said this about the Spirit, which believers in him were to receive, for as yet there was no Spirit, because Jesus was not yet glorified. Whoa. Lot to deal with here. Okay? So remember, John, and whoever's writing the Gospel of John, is interpreting this many years after the fact. I want to deal briefly with that last part because it's sort of it's a rabbit hole for us here. But let me get a drink because I'm losing my voice. Too much talk. He said this about the Spirit because believers were to receive, as yet there was no Spirit. Okay, that's not true. We know that the Spirit existed from the beginning of creation. A Christian belief is that the Trinity is together, all together, pre-existent, right? It's not, it has been deemed a Christian heresy by councils and, long ago, that to believe that there is an order of origin to the Trinity is heretical, right? That all parts of the Trinity pre-exist. So when we read in Genesis, the Spirit of God hovered over the waters, right? Well, what's that talking about? It's talking about the Holy Spirit, right? Present at creation. So that's not what either the writer of the Gospel of John is wrong, or that he means something else. And I think it's the latter. I think what he means is that the manifestation of the Spirit on the day of Pentecost had not yet happened.
Right.
Doesn't mean the Spirit doesn't exist. The Spirit has not been manifested in the same way. Do you see the difference? So don't get too hung up on this. Jesus is standing in a land that is primarily desert. He could have been standing in El Paso and had a similar effect. One of the number one things that kills people crossing the desert is lack of water. You got to hydrate over and over and over again because the climate is so brutal. And this is what the people of Jesus' day would have understood about their climate as well. It is a dry desert climate. And when Jesus says, I was going to ask you about this, Pedro. You've been in this desert. I mean, you got dehydrated, right?
Yeah, pretty bad.
So it's not good, right?
No, it's definitely not good.
But you were probably still drinking water, right? Just not enough.
Yeah, you don't even feel it until you're in the hospital. Like, what happened? Yeah, it's just quicksand, pretty much.
And people knew this in this culture, right? And so when Jesus says, let anyone who is thirsty come to me, and out of the believer's heart shall flow rivers of living water, this is an object lesson people who heard him would have understood very clearly, right? This was not just some crazy thing. It was a very specific message to those people. Does that make sense? And what are the big themes in the Gospel of John? Water's one of them, right? Believe, water. Verse 40. When they heard these words, some in the crowd said, this is really the prophet. Others said, this is the Messiah. But some asked, surely the Messiah does not come from Galilee, does he? Has not the scripture said that the Messiah is descended from David and comes from Bethlehem, the village where David lives? So there was a division in the crowd because of him. Some of them wanted to arrest him, but no one laid hands on him. It is so easy for us to sanitize the life and ministry of Jesus as this compassionate, loving teacher, which he was. But the reality we must never forget is that he was a divisive figure who people wanted to arrest and wanted to kill. Right?
What does that mean when they say, surely he was supposed to come from the city of David?
Because the prophecy that they're interpreting.
Did they not understand that he did?
Well, the Gospels say different things.
This is a confusing point.
There's a workaround.
Right? This is a very confusing point. And it's one of the barriers to some Jews today believing Jesus could have been the Messiah. Right? Because of the way they read the Old Testament prophecies.
Oh, but he was born in Bethlehem, but he was raised in Nazareth, right?
But he wasn't, as we would say in a small town, you're not from here.
Right. Yeah.
You might have been born here, but you're not from here.
Oh, okay.
Right? That's what this is about.
Okay.
Verse 45. Then the temple police went back to the chief priests and Pharisees, who asked them, why did you not arrest him? The police answered, never has anyone spoken like this. Then the Pharisees replied, so we have a little rebellion going on here. Then the Pharisees replied, surely you have not been deceived too, have you? Has any one of the authorities or of the Pharisees believed in him? But this crowd, which does not know the law, okay, here again, you're not smart enough to understand this. This crowd that does not understand the law, they are accursed. It's like the criticism of Rick Warren. Nicodemus, who had gone to Jesus before and who was one of them, asked, we know Nicodemus, right? Went to Jesus by night. Our law does not judge people without first giving them a hearing to find out what they are doing, does it? They replied, surely you are not also from Galilee, are you? That's a slam, right? Search and you will see that no prophet is to arise from Galilee.
Is that in the Bible somewhere?
So, yes. What they're referring to is the Old Testament prophecies that the Messiah will come from the line of David, but this requires interpretation, right? That means Bethlehem, or it means Jerusalem, right? And this is why the gospel writers go to such pains to describe Jesus' birth, because they're trying to link, particularly Matthew, Mark, Luke, they're trying to link him to this prophecy, right? That it matters if you're writing to a Jewish audience in particular. So this is I don't even know a modern day comparison to give this to, because we don't live in a world of prophecies like this much anymore, right? But this was very, very important to them. Yeah.
I always thought the lineage thing was who gave birth to who, Ruth and all that, and then that was a direct lineage. I didn't realize it had anything to do with the area.
So that's why Matthew makes that, it is Matthew because of that lineage, isn't it? Yeah.
The
begats, yeah.
Yeah, but one of them does all the way to Adam, goes the other direction, right? And then one.
Matthew's one that begins with this. So there's a reason for that, and it's trying to make this case that Jesus is descended from David, because that's the way you make the case. And the Pharisees, straining at multiple gnats here, just can't get there, right? Because this defies their expectation of what's to happen. Yeah, Paul?
I'm thinking that these folks from Galilee don't really have a chance with the chief priests and the Pharisees because they're illiterate. The only people who even know what the law says are the chief priests and the Pharisees. They're the only ones who can read it, right?
So yeah, that's true.
I mean, until Wittenberg, we were all in that same boat.
Fair enough, they've heard it. Again, I think people memorize. But the point here is you can know the letter of the law and still not hear the Spirit. Mm-hmm. And the Pharisees and the religious leaders who thought they were so well educated couldn't see plainly the work of God happening before them, because they had made their own case in their minds about what this would be. Yeah. Thoughts? I know we've covered a lot of territory today, but you see how all these verses are related, and I thought I don't want to drag this out to 2 weeks because I know you want to get to the woman caught in adultery next week.
So spice.
Yeah.
Right? Absolutely. Questions, comments, thoughts, anyone?
Go.
No.
Melanie?
You.
I'm just curious. We have the internet, and we've had all these different genealogical societies and all, yet we still have trouble trying to trace our ancestry. How did they're able to go back, 2,000 years of, I don't know how far back do they do with Jesus, going back to, Adam. How are they able to go and say that this is the scarlet thread goes right on through? How can they keep track of all that? We try to go through Find a Grave and everything else.
Okay, so several answers to that question. And the question is, for those at home, how are they able to keep up their lineage? Apparently more easily than we can.
And,
right?
and its importance is because it's got to be that pure line.
Right. So number one, it was very important to them.
Yeah.
So the things that are important, we pay attention to. Number two, there were fewer people in the world at that point. There were fewer people who had lived in recorded history at that point. So, I mean, we can only go back so far because there's a lot that we just can't get past, right? Mm-hmm. Number three, they were dealing with a smaller defined geographic area. Okay, they were, I mean, for most of us, if we're looking at our family tree, we're looking beyond North America somewhere.
Right.
And this gets very complicated.
Just to add up, in that part of the world, what family you come from, determine who you do business with, who you marry to, what kind of neighborhood you live. So the family name in the Middle East and that part of the world is much more important than it is for us. We don't really care, but for them, it's a matter of.
They keep track of these things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Melanie and then Caroline.
And just on that point, also, the Gospels were written after Christ lived, 30 years at least. Mark, probably. So, they wanted to. They had a reason to. It might be a little propaganda, actually, to show that lineage.
Right.
Because they were speaking to a Jewish audience mostly, I guess, and, right. And so that hooks,
Yeah, there's a reason. There's a reason he begins that way.
Because there's another lineage, but now I can't remember which book is.
Yeah, Caroline.
Didn't the families of the Jews keep track of things by memory? I mean, didn't they have?
Well, the oral tradition, yeah.
Right.
And compared to it matters. It matters so much that
And scrolls. I would have thought that they would have had scrolls keeping track of.
Well, but most people were illiterate.
That's true.
Yeah. So yes.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a different thing, but you're talking about giving the lineage to prove that
Right.
Jesus in the temple at 12 with it was kind of, there's where he got his training, right?
Right. Yeah.
So-
that was his debut.
His bar mitzvah.
Yeah. So they couldn't say, well, they didn't know it, but they couldn't say he didn't know anything.
Well, and remember, Jesus' followers called him a rabbi. It's not that he was unlearned, right? He just didn't have the seal of approval of the religious authorities. But clearly, as a Jewish boy, he had been through the training, right? So it's not true to say that he is just talking out of thin air. I mean, even if he was, it's the words of God, right? So
He even put himself through training, I think, at one point when they were journeying back from, was it Nazareth? And they found him among the priests.
Right.
Teaching to them, yeah.
Right. Okay. So big point out of this, the whole lesson is, how do we know who's speaking truth and who's not when it comes to religion? And Jesus says, measure those words against what we know of God. And is it about that speaker or is it about God? Is it when people speak with humility? And I'm just always cautious when someone speaks with such absolute certainty that they alone have the truth. It usually makes me think they alone do not have the truth. Right.
Just one thing, I just want to know your thoughts on this because I may be straining here, but I know in my New Testament class we would talk about whenever bad things happen to the Jews, it's because they're not taking care of widows, children, the marginalized.
Right.
They get exiled into Egypt and, all these things. So I'm interpreting this discussion with the Pharisees and stuff as Jesus saying, your laws are there, but they're not taking care of the widows and the.
He says you're not following the law.
Yeah,
right.
And that's God's law.
Right.
That's what He punishes you from, and that's what I'm about. And
I mean, again, this whole thing begins.
Does that line up to you, or?
Yeah, no, it does, because Jesus begins this whole conversation by saying, "You say the law is important to you, but you yourself, you're not following the law.
Yeah.
You're following the parts of the law that you like." Where have we seen that? I mean, that's American fundamentalism. Yeah.
I think the thing that's so frustrating when you say what you just said about finding the truth is so many people on the other side of the political equation, they really, really believe that Trump is God's answer. And I mean, they really do, and they are willing to overlook some of the mistakes and things that are obvious, because they really think he's planet, they really do think that.
Well, and I think all of us have the potential. Here's the danger. All of us have the potential to be misled, because we all come to the world with biases that we want to be true. And this is why the number one word I would use from this is humility. That we've got to always have a posture of humility to say, I could be wrong. Mm-hmm. Because when we never believe we could be wrong, mm-hmm. we're probably wrong. For sure. Last comment.
Kind of a contemporary thing, but history. I've watched so many, the 1619 Project, all kinds of stuff on PBS and during Black History Month. It's so frustrating and disgusting to know that there is so much history that nobody ever talked about.
There's so much history no one ever talks about. Again, we're at the point where there's so much history, it's hard to talk about it all.
What are you talking about?
But there are things that ought to rise to the top that haven't, because they've been suppressed, right? So again, not to beat a dead horse, last week was I forgot how many years, anniversary of the Tulsa race massacre. Mm-hmm. That most of us knew nothing about until about 3 years ago, mm-hmm. right? That's a perfect example of this as well. So, all right, we're going to end there. We made it through a whole bunch of verses today. Thank God we can get to adultery next week.
How should we?
How should we prepare?
Prepare for this.
I think I'll not answer that question. I will say, not to get you off on a rant here, I'm going to close with this with no comment. One of the big debates going on in the SBC over women in ministry is whether Mrs. Criswell actually taught a Bible study class, which she actually taught at First Baptist for years. There are people who are trying to say she only did it under the authority of a Bible scholar who was sitting next to her and was not on her own authority, and that he corrected her. Wow. And it is insane the lengths people are going to.
Well, there always was.
To try to justify the wife of the most prominent fundamentalist pastor in history in this town taught an enormous Sunday morning Bible study class on her own. It was broadcast on the radio. Yeah. Right? But the way you justify this, well, she wasn't really teaching them, because there was a male overseer next to her to correct her if she got something wrong. Let's pray together. Thank you, God, for this beautiful day, and thank you for these friends. We pray, as always, that you would help us to understand your truth more fully. We pray through Jesus Christ. Amen.
And it's wonderful to see a full